Okay, want to start again? Okay, take two. Welcome everybody to the September meeting of the Philipstown Conservation Board. We're going to start this by approving the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the June minutes?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and do I have a motion to approve July's minutes?
Motion approved.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we have approved June and July's minutes. Okay, let us go first, and I think you'll lead us through this, is Route 529, Route 9.
Yeah.
If you would talk to us about that.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to start with
Good evening, I'm Steve Marino, Tim Miller Associates. I'm representing the property owners this evening, and they're also here to hear what's going on and just answer any questions if you have any at this point.
So basically, you're here because a violation was put on your property for clearing an area that was regulated under Chapter 93 of the Town Code. So we've engaged you now to help rectify and start rectifying that violation. So we had a brief email exchange, I think, after that, basically calling your attendance to this meeting. And moving forward, the board is going to discuss how they want to handle lifting that violation ultimately. So maybe if we could get a little bit of background on what you were intending on doing there, and then we can kind of walk through the next steps of how we'd handle that.
So our first agenda was really just to clean up the area. There was a lot of overgrowth and weeds and poison ivy. We didn't realize it was regulated because we checked the wetlands map and it wasn't. I didn't realize it was the water course, and so we wanted to clean it up, and the property just hadn't been taken care of in decades, and so it was just messy, overgrown, weedy, and then also where the stream area, there's a lot of just dirt, that almost standing dirt that had just been sitting there, and our goal is to clean it up and plant new trees and flowers just to make things look nicer.
Okay. So I think Andy and I briefly spoke about the issue, and essentially I think you're doing the right thing. You're retaining a professional to come in and treat this as a violation and rectifying the violation from that point on. I would recommend to the board, I mean, that area, even from previous owners, we've had discussions with them about making sure that area was kept in that state. There were proposals in the past to install a pool in that area that got shut down. So there's a little bit of a history with that portion of the property. So essentially what I would recommend to the board is that they go out and take a look at the site. Most likely their evaluation would be that you would restore the area back to an improved state from what it was. And then if there was anything that you would want to do beyond that, essentially to improve the area and whatever your mind's eye was at that point, to then apply for a permit to the town to work in that area of the property.
We're not looking to change anything or add anything. It's really cleaning it up. So replanting, and then I guess also we wanted to clean out the dirt that's in the water because it's just all of the sediment that's collecting there and not moving.
Right. I think that it may be a matter of just understanding the definition of cleaning out. Essentially, those areas typically we would not work in that fashion to clean it out. They function in a capacity in a natural way that they don't, even though they look overgrown or under taken care of. They still function in a natural way that we don't necessarily want to intervene in without having a fully thought out plan or a discussion with this board, or in any way that would have some sort of unintended consequence essentially to the ecology in that area, however little or great. So
I think specifically what we're talking about is one particular area where, because this is generally runoff from Route 90 as well as whatever culvert comes under 9B from the other side.
Yeah.
And it comes into the site, it drops down through a rock splash pad essentially into a little small pooled area where it then overflows down the channel, it then goes down the hill.
Yeah.
So I think what we're talking about here is just in that one specific area, which is maybe 10 feet by 15 feet, is just removing some of that sediment that's accumulated there from gravel and sand that's been, dumped on the road during snow events and such that has wandered down into there. And it's probably 6 to 8 inches deep. I don't anticipate it's even more than that. So when we do the site walk, we can take a look at that area and kind of make a call on that.
My concern, and the board will see it too, is that it's the entire stretch of that intermittent water course was
Oh, yeah.
deep.
No, I'm just talking about, in terms of cleaning out anything physically other than replanting, it's only that one small area. The area we're talking about putting a restoration plan for would include, before it drops down, you can see the area, obviously where it's been cleaned out, so, it would include all of that area.
Yeah, no, my point there was just even with vegetation that looks overgrown or unmaintained, that sometimes in these situations, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think at this point, there's an opportunity to improve the area, with a well thought out plan. So I think scheduling a site visit at this point is the next step, and then coming up with that plan to be presented to this board is going to be the course of action.
Max, just to be clear though, nothing can happen until we go and see and then we, is that correct? Like
Yeah, I mean,
no further action can take place in that area on the property?
Yeah, I mean, you can start developing the plan.
So we would like to suggest and request at this point then is that we do the site visit sooner rather than later, just so we don't miss the planting season for this year to get some stuff in the ground.
That's fair.
Because we're in the middle of September already, so.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions, or? Yeah, having not seen it, we're sort of shooting from the hip, other than Max, who has been there. Okay, so that'll be one of the things we schedule, Cheryl, before the end of the meeting? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm hoping, Mr. Prins, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, you're ready. Where do you want me? Over here?
Yes, please.
Close to the microphone. Turn the microphone towards you.
Yeah. You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
I can hear you.
So, thankfully, we're back in front of you. We had a 3-month diversion with the planning board regarding steep slopes and accessory structures, but I think that's been resolved. But let me first report on the dock. We did get our first permit, which is the concurrence by New York State. I've been in contact with Andy Orzel at the Army Corps of Engineers. He says he's on it. He'll get us a permit. He'll email me when he's taking action. He's, as you probably know, overloaded. But we expect that will happen relatively soon, and then we'll be in front of the town to get the final permit. As you know, we got no action from the DEC.
Okay.
Then on to the addition and the pool. We did meet with the planning board. Ron Gaynor put together a memo that he issued on August 12. That's part of the record. And we addressed the issues that he raised and the other documentation that he wanted. I had a phone call with Greg Wooner to make sure that what we were doing was what he thought he needed to look at, and he said okay. So I think we're squared away on that. And in response to questions and raised here and observations from the site visit that a few of you were able to make, we've downscaled the pool area. The addition is almost the same, although a little configured. The atrium is a little bigger and the addition is smaller. So the pool, we've now separated into two separate segments. It's not this big, four-season building with movable glass and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be a kind of simple, regular pool with a retractable pool enclosure that we can pull over it for winter time, and then a small pool house with a garage underneath. We think everything complies with everything that the planning board and Ron Gaynor's memo set forth, and everything else we can think of. So we're in front of you and hoping that we can move forward and address any questions and concerns that you have. I'm happy to go into more detail. We also provided 6 pages of site plans with the steep slope overlay and the calculations and all of that. So,
Who would like to start?
Want to go first?
I guess I'm going to go first. I think the board is very sensitive to your needs and desires. It's a complicated project. The way I interpret, and I did speak to Ron Gaynor, the town engineer, in terms of steep slopes, if the disturbances are kept under 2,000 square feet, which includes not only permanent disturbances, but temporary disturbances, then it would be permitted by the Conservation Board rather than going back to the Planning Board. What's difficult about the site, I think everybody here, other than perhaps Scott, who hasn't been on the board, is very familiar with it, because the previous owner was in front of us on and off for probably 7 or 8 years, slowly but surely building his family compound, if you will. It's a very difficult site because of water courses, wetlands, and some steep slopes. On top of it, which makes it, and I'm sensitive to this, I'm not exactly sure where we go, what makes it more difficult is it's not one parcel, it's several parcels, which you would like to keep not combined, if you will, so that at some point in time you would have the chance of selling one parcel and not the other. I mean, I think we all understand that. So the question really becomes, how do we do this and make sure that not only are we complying to the different town codes and the environment, but that we're also looking at what other alternatives could be and what's reasonable and what's not. I mean, have you picked out what's the most reasonable? Possibly?
yes, there's a whole section in our
Yeah, I mean, we
overview
read-
memo
Yes, I
about
mean, in words.
site considerations.
Yeah, in words, I'm not going to argue that you've provided us with a lot of material. But as I sit here, there's a lot of things that are not answered yet. And it doesn't mean that what you presented might not be the ideal situation, the best plan. I have a bunch of questions in terms of, we're dealing with, I know when I was there with Lou several months ago, we had actually measured roughly where the pool is, and you've shifted it from the tidal wetland, and you were within the wetland buffer, but nothing terrible. I think we had figured.
I'm sorry, we were within the wetlands buffer, but
The wetland buffer, that's the tidal marsh, but it wasn't a large area. It was perhaps somewhere between 5 and 10 feet. And either something could have been shifted, downsized, or there could be mitigation. What we were not thinking of at the time is we were not paying attention to the extra bedroom and atrium, which is within the stream water course. As a matter of fact, a good amount of the existing house is within the stream water course at this point. What we also were not thinking about is, since you're adding a bedroom, the septic needs to be upgraded. And again, all of these might very well be doable, and for instance, the septic upgrade, you might be using a contained system, a peat system. This might be better than what's there. But what I think is sort of lacking at this time is, I think that, and I'd like the board to really weigh in. I think that what we need to see is, A, what are alternatives that could have been used to keep this out of the way? B, if there is no, we need to see an alternative analysis. I think we also need to see, actually, in terms of where we're touching steep slopes, what type of a building plan there would be. Because you're going to be affecting some steep slopes permanently by chopping it, but very possibly you might have construction equipment or other barriers within the steep slopes that are temporary. We need to be able to see all of that. We'd also like to see, okay, what are alternative sightings? You might not like them, and you've actually spoken to them very well in this document, but at times a plan, or as the cliche is, a picture is often worth 1,000 words. I do think we need to see things like that. I'd like to know more about the septic. Perhaps that is, not only does it need to be upgraded, but it could be part of the mitigation plan, that it's better, that what you would do would be better than what's there now. So that's where I'm sort of coming from. I don't think right now lack of a better term for it, I don't think your application is complete. I think we need more information.
Okay, well, I would have appreciated getting these comments previously because I could have addressed them. And as to your first things, we went over that in the memo. So I'm not sure what it is you're asking me to do that I haven't done, except provide you with pictures of the alternative sites that we rejected.
Do I have some thoughts from some of the other members? And then we can go through it and put together a list.
I want a little bit more clarity on the change in size and scope that you mentioned when you first started talking about the pool and the pool deck. I just want to understand what that looks like and what the changes specifically are. I'm just looking at your series of plans, but if you could just share what you've done in terms of the deck and so forth.
Yeah, okay. Well, originally, and this was drawn up before we had any steep slope analysis, so we put something down, and now that we got a steep slope analysis, that fed into our thinking as well as the questions and comments from the board. What was originally my idea was to build a four-season permanent building with a concrete back wall and partial side walls, and then entire glass along the side and glass for much of the roof, all of which could be retracted for summer and then slide back into place. So it would be a classic, indoor pool.
Right.
And we also proposed putting a deck out over the gravel area in front of it. That was quite a sizable deck. Everything altogether was close to 3,000 square feet.
Right.
So what we've done is turn the pool into a regular pool.
And has the size of that pool changed?
No.
Okay.
No.
The dimensions are the same?
Anything narrower isn't really a recreational pool, and we don't want just a lap pool. And because I want to be able to swim in the winter, I have to insulate everything, and I would use a very high-grade pool cover made out of slats, which eliminates 99% of evaporation and has an R factor of 5 to 11. I can't use one of them on a pool that's wider for, a 20 by 20 play area, and then it's a lap pool. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of self-defeating. And I did play with a number of different configurations and finally decided that this is the one that works best for everything that has to be taken into account. Then we would have a retractable pool cover that we can slide over on top of it over the winter time. and I can also super insulate that with a material called Solex and get it up to an R of about 5. And dramatically lower heating bills, et cetera, use of energy for that pool than you would see in almost any other pool you've looked at. And then we also cut down the size of the pool house area, which once was going to be part of this great big building. Now it's just a small 330 square foot of floor space spot that you can hang out with if the weather isn't great, or in the wintertime you can change into your swim trunks, you know.
And what about any changes to the atrium extra bedroom or additional bedroom, I think I'd rather call it?
The atrium, which entirely lies on non-steep slope, we made it deeper so that we could either move the kitchen there or we could have a dining area there. And then we downsized the addition, which was just about 1,000 square feet, and now it's about 820, 810. So the bathroom's smaller, this dressing area is smaller, the sitting room is smaller, the bedroom is smaller.
So it's hard to see on the plans. You know, I think what the board is wrestling with is it's a constricted site, and you're within 2 different wetland buffers.
Yeah, as I said in the early memo, 98% of that
Right.
property is, you know,
It's the understatement of the year. Andy.
yeah.
It's a constrained site.
You know, and we don't want to be overly limiting, but we also, want to do the right thing. So what I'd like, the thoughts I'd like from the board is normally, in most cases, we don't allow non-necessary structures within buffers. And
You
let
permitted
us-
pools entirely within wetland buffer, so.
very, very rarely, and there has to
Okay,
be,
well-
let us finish, because
Yeah.
we're not saying no to you. Okay? We'd like to help you. I mean, our job here, really, the way we look at it, I'll say it's our culture, is not to say no, but how can we help a landowner or a homeowner do what they want and do it the right way and make it better?
That's
Okay.
what we're trying to do.
Okay, so, and there's a lot of things going on here. And we're also sensitive to the fact, we understand that, you bought a house that I guess it's 3 stories, and as you get older, you'd like to have a good amount of it usable as 1 floor. I get that. And I don't think anybody else on the board has an issue with that. I think the question is, how do we do this in a way that's environmentally sound, doesn't set a bad precedent as well, and is, realistic? So, I'd like some thoughts from the board. I know, you had said to us, well, why didn't you ask for these other things before? Unfortunately, we were in a little bit of limbo when I went out with Lou. One of the things that came to my mind is, and it's not mentioned in the engineer's memo, but he and I did speak about it, most of the property is within the Hudson Scenic Overlay. And a lot of what you have done does mitigate what you originally had. And I'm not going to argue that the pool might be, in an ideal spot to help that. With steep slopes and watercourse, a little bit more difficult. So what's everybody's thought? Where do we want to go? What would we like to see to make sure that if we do allow, and I used a big if we do allow, basically encroachments on steep slopes and on not 1 but 2 watercourses, how do we make sure that this is the best place for it? And what type of mitigations would we like in return? And what protections need to be there?
Yeah,
And we like
and
to
I would
work
just point out that there, from a regulatory point of view, there is no intrusion on steep slope, because we're not disturbing 2,000 square feet. To the extent steep slope impinges on one of the 8 criteria you have, then it comes back into play, but otherwise, it's not in play. I think that's just a technical note.
I
It's
think,
regulatory in terms of our code, though,
Yeah,
and
and
what
the
we,
town's
what is
code
our
is-
purview to enforce.
Yeah, I mean, our town's code is that basically steep slopes are not to be disturbed, except where necessary.
More than
predominantly
2,000
for-
square feet.
It's predominantly for travel ways, utilities, on the whole. Doesn't mean it can't be done if there's a reason for it.
I know. I don't write
So-
these codes, but it's perfectly apparent what it is that it says, and the town attorney agreed.
yeah, I think Andy's point, and speaking to your point about the 2,000 square foot threshold, it also includes limit of disturbance in those areas, even if it's a temporary disturbance during construction.
Yes, and we've taken that into account.
So
We've
that's,
added square footage all around, plus the way the machine will come in, it will only hack away from the non-steep slope area. It's not going to get up on the steep slope and.
right, I mean, those are
and cut
details.
down,
I mean, those
so.
are details that would clarify a lot of those points. And, I don't want to speak over the board, but having a detailed construction sequence that reiterates all those points and reiterates how, what you are proposing will comply to those set standards is really important for us, because it answers a lot of the questions that, we're posing to ourselves essentially by just looking at, this plan.
Yeah, so should I get Charlie Pohemus out and go over it carefully with him and
I
have
think it
a,
becomes more, while that would not hurt and certainly not cost you anything. I think the detailed engineering plans, if the board is comfortable with this approach. And, is there anything that anybody would like to see, as I said, I'll use the term alternative siting analysis. I don't want to make it sound overly complicated. Where else this could go.
Yeah, I mean, the alternatives analysis I think is important. The other aspects of the application that are really important in this scenario too is, your construction sequence, like I mentioned before, having that laid out on a plan. Your erosion control measures during construction, having that all laid out on a plan in terms of where you're proposing and how you're going to protect the regulated resources on the property during construction. That's something that's standard in these applications. The other thing that, we should take into account as well is all the additional development that's going on. Where is the runoff going from any sort of impervious surface like a roof? Where is that going to be conveyed to? I think currently the way it stands on the current structure there, that's all directed into dry wells in its current state. And that was something that we imposed prior to you owning the property.
and I think it's directed under, the whole patio is sand for many feet
Yeah.
behind that massive stone wall.
Right.
And then in the front yard, so to speak, there's a whole series of Coltex or whatever they call them, of dry wells. And I can tell you, I was there the night of the remnants of Ida, and when we got 6 inches of rain in 5 hours, and the drainage all around the house, no problem whatsoever. The road drainage was fine, other than cutting ruts, but the crown, everything, it absorbed an awful lot. So, good job done.
Right. So
And we would propose to do the same thing around the pool.
Right.
That is all, have it built on sand, et cetera, so that it's very pervious.
yeah, I mean, those are all details that we would want to understand.
Because what you provided us with is, it's an architect's plan laid over surveyor's map. And I think at this point, what's needed, unless, as I said, I brought up that I felt that, an alternative analysis of where other things could go would be interesting, but Does it make sense? I'm not exactly sure. I mean, Lou, you and I had looked at, it becomes another parcel, which would be to the south of the house, where you could put the pool. My personal opinion, and this is just my opinion, not the board's, is yes, you could put it there. Would you need a variance from zoning for a setback? Maybe, maybe not. But it would, then we're dealing with the Hudson Scenic Overlay, and I'm not sure that's a better solution, as well as I'm sensitive to the fact that you would rather have the pool on the other parcel.
Yeah,
Right.
and as I point out in the memo, either we're going to be only about 50 feet from our neighbor, or we're going to be within 100 feet of where the other water course comes in, or 100 feet of the wetlands, or if we back up, then we're back into steep slope. So I don't think that site does anything for anybody, and it's a horrible site from a scenic overlay point of view.
That I will personally agree with you on. So,
I would like to get my colleagues on the board's opinion on whether, I mean, I almost feel like I need to treat, in my own mind, I need to treat the addition and the pool separately
that's
in
fair.
terms of utility and need. I don't know how you all feel about that.
Whether or not we want to look at it as a single permit or two.
Yeah, I don't see, I don't see why that can't be done that way. And I don't think it's really difficult for the homeowner to deal with either.
Well, that's just looking at the two of them separate.
Separately, sure, yes.
Yeah, but it still seems to me to make sense, it's one application.
Well,
Otherwise,
Should they be
it's
one
just two pieces of
application is my
paper.
and
question.
it might make your life easier having two separate applications, because one might go a bit quicker than the other. That's, you know,
Okay, well, from our point of view, the pool is more important than the addition. We can still walk, but we can't recreate
Right.
with our grandkids and our kids the way we would like to.
so my suggestion is, I'm gonna ask the board, do they want to see alternative sites for the pool? If they're comfortable with where it is at this moment, then I think what's needed is full engineering plans.
I am not comfortable with where the pool is.
Okay,
I am not.
okay.
Were you did you go to this?
No.
I mean, I've been to the
I
site
think we should really,
So then
10 times
I think
in the
if
past.
that's the case, and I know Scott hasn't been there, I think that we
I
should
think we
do
have to.
a
I'd be
site.
happy to go
Come,
back.
come visit, we'd
Yeah, I think we need
be
to
happy
do
to
a-
host
Happy to
you.
go back.
I think we
Yeah.
need to do a site visit ASAP.
absolutely.
Yeah.
all
So,
the plans,
and then
all
what
the
it would, if it works out, you know, for instance, everybody looks at it and goes, yes, this makes the most sense, then it's at least saved you that time. I do believe that we are, you know, I am almost positive that we're gonna say to you at that point, though, you're gonna need to give us a full set of plans from an engineer of where the pool is going, the construction narrative, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, and to that point too, the mitigation plan as
Yeah.
well is a huge factor, obviously, in this application.
And how you improve, it's different than the mitigation, but since you are adding a bedroom, you will be changing the septic. So we look at that, and we've pushed the Putnam County Board of Health to accept, where often they don't want to, alternative types of septic fields.
Which would be a real win on
Yes,
this
it would
site.
be a real one.
Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
a relatively new kind of septic system. It's made in Japan. It's being used now. It's the system of choice by the county for around the lakes, particularly on the eastern side of the county. Our architect, who just bought a new lakefront property a year and a half ago, that's what he put in. The county loved it, et cetera. The water comes out cleaner, and you actually have a smaller drain field.
I think another point too about keeping the properties separate in this application, it kind of hampers your ability to perform mitigation on your parcel.
I'm sorry, to perform a what?
mitigation for this work. It's significant, I mean, just looking at the property lines here and the areas that you have available to improve from our perspective in those plans, is significantly shrunk. It's a very small piece of wetlands, and the majority of what you have on the parcel here is that water course. So I think that keeping that in mind as well, in proposing your mitigation plan and what the board would be willing to accept is something that should be thought about.
Well, it would be wonderful from our point of view to have an idea of what the board is interested in. You know, a hell of a lot of mitigation went into the total refurbishment of those wetlands. A lot of the plantings that were put in have in fact taken and are growing and are doing well. I spend probably 5 hours a weekend, you know, going after groundnut, which is choking the cattails, or loosestrife, or phragmites, or the Japanese knotweed. The knotweed's almost gone, right? And there's an area where it was that would be great, and it's actually, I think, on this parcel to do some stuff. But if we can get some thinking from you, whether you want us to focus on the water course, you want us to focus on the wetlands, you want us to focus, you know, by where the pool would go, et cetera. We're happy to talk with you about that because it's very important for us. It's one of the reasons we purchased this property, to keep it a healthy, thriving ecosystem for 3 water courses and the tidal marsh.
I mean, not to speak too soon, but I mean, you could use that as your ultimate, you know, management statement going into your planning process, and then we can look at that and maybe critique it at that point. You know, if you want to work with a professional as that being your goal, essentially, in you know, in the future.
Well, Steve's been our consultant, and so you're basically advising. We sit down with Steve, and he can look over the current state of the marsh and the water course, which isn't, by the way, running right now, and give us feedback, and through a dialogue with him, come back to you with a proposal at the next meeting.
Yeah.
But I think it might make sense, first, a digression. I assume what you were saying, Max, is even though we're focusing on one parcel, there's several parcels that you own, and that some of the mitigation for this work would not necessarily just exist on one parcel. It might be better thought out if it goes outside of the parcel. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can, you know, we can show you a survey, or we can put together a composite of the wetlands area to show you the whole thing. Because it straddles 2 parcels.
So my suggestion is that we try to do a site visit as soon as possible on a
Is
weekend.
this flagged? Is the,
Yeah, it's flagged, and in fact, the area by where the pool would be, although it was flagged for what we were going to do, it hasn't been flagged for the new proposal,
You
which
wanna
I
change
could
those.
do over this weekend. I could
Yeah.
basically fix that. And I cut down, you know, there's a lot of wild wisteria through there, and I basically kind of cut it down so you can see the stakes even in the summertime.
So I think that might make, this way, you know, I'm sorry that you were delayed because we referred this to the planning board and we went back and forth.
We had to find it out, and it just took a while.
So with that, let's try to, Cheryl, again, at the end of the meeting, let's try to schedule a time and we'll get to you in the next couple weeks. And then hopefully we can give you guidance so that you can come up with plans and we can get you moving.
Yeah, okay, and you can look at the marsh at the same time, which I think is, actually, it's doing pretty well. We probably got 15 or 20 active mallow plants, and a lot of thalictrum showed up, and the Joe Pye weed was doing great this year, et cetera. It's looking quite good.
And have you seen the latest guidance from the DEC? Leave tiny pockets of purple loosestrife?
Just to support the biocontrol?
Yeah, to support the biocontrol.
What's that?
really?
Yeah. leave small pockets of purple loosestrife to support the beetles that have been brought in.
To support the beetles, because I think the beetles might have chewed up about 100 of the 600 or 700 loosestrife plants that we have in the wetlands area.
Okay.
Do you want to, I mean, currently you have two applications in front of the board, one for the dock and then one for this project. Do we have comments on that?
Were we talking about splitting it again?
Well, there's an existing
It's
dock,
already split.
right, there's an existing
No,
dock.
I mean, a third, you know,
Right,
between the
there's a-
pool and the.
Well, let me give a tiny bit of a background. You probably all know there's an existing dock. Mr. Prins would like to put a floating dock in. The town engineer's advice is that it all should be one permit.
Did they share why?
I think he wanted to look at it as a holistic, or one big plan so that he could evaluate any
The
issues
advice we
with the
got was
overlays.
to make a single application for the pool and for the addition. One for the dock and one for the other two, which is what we did.
Yeah, I mean, just talking out loud, I'm wondering if what the town engineer's concern was, is that an engineer was not, even though it's relatively simple, was not overseeing the dock. I don't want to call it renovation, but improvement. So I'm not really sure on that. We can find out more on that, because essentially what you want to do is put a floating dock in and a gangway, right?
Yeah, and I think at the very first meeting, that was discussed, and you guys basically signed off and said, you know, when you've got your Army Corps permit, go get the town permit.
Right, the Army Corps gave a permit, and the DEC doesn't feel that they need to permit it.
Really?
It's an existing dock. You know, my only comment is at some point the dock is going to need to be repaired, because I don't think it's been touched in 50
That
years.
may well happen as part of putting in the floating dock.
But, so, I assume, can that wait till next meeting, the permit for that? So we can, I'd like to speak to the town
I
engineer.
suspect we're not going to get the Army Corps permit for another week or two.
Okay. Is this way, both myself and Max can speak to Ron Gaynor and
Yeah,
see what
yeah,
his-
and I'm not going to build it it's too
Right.
late to do it
Yeah.
this fall,
Okay.
so.
Okay, but I don't see that as being an issue.
Yeah,
That's,
no, I agree.
yeah, that's the easy part.
Yeah.
All right, anything else I can help you with?
No, we'll schedule a visit and we'll get this going.
Okay,
Okay?
well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And like to keep this moving.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Welcome Homes. A welcome home.
Good evening, Steve Marino again, Tim Miller Associates, representing Welcome Homes. Mr. Sophias, right?
Vigela Sophias, yes.
Miguel Sophias is the design engineer for the project. We did meet on Saturday. I met on Saturday with three of the board members, and there were questions that came up about the design of the septic system and history of the septic system area, et cetera. So Mr. Sophias is here to talk about that aspect of it. Just as a quick reminder, the application is for construction of a three-bedroom residence within 100-foot buffer to a wetland on the west side of Route 9D. As you know from the site walk and from our previous discussions, the Ansville Creek flows through the eastern part of the site and the floodplain associated with it. The wetland on the western side originates from some kind of a drainage point or spring point here, flows down through the back of the site under a culvert here. There must have been an historic logging road or something that went through there, and then into that floodplain wetland that then flows to the south. The septic system has been approved by the County Health Department. Mr. Sophias will talk more about that. But it is partially located as well within the 100-foot buffer. when you look at the site, you can see that there's very little of the site. There's this white area here in the front that's outside of the buffer. And, as we get closer to the property line, we deal with zoning. Let me just turn this a little bit so you can see it better. Deal with zoning setbacks, et cetera, so that becomes an issue as well. So, we're kind of caught with, when we look at the alternatives analysis, there's really not a whole lot to do here that we can, we don't have a whole lot here to work with. It's basically a rock knob or a knob on the site that slopes in all different directions from this little knob on the top. The area here that's shown as being buffer but not wetland is flat when you get down to the toe of that slope, flat then to the floodplain. So again, alternatives are difficult. It's a 3-bedroom house, not a 4-bedroom house. It's a limited size footprint. And the septic system, again, has been designed to meet the current county code. So if you want a little background on the septic.
Sure. Again, Vigelis Sophias with Heartland Engineering prepared the engineering plans that we're looking at. So yes, the home is a 3-bedroom home. It has been approved with the health department. The septic system, we've done close coordination with the health department of locating this the system itself. We've done a series of test pits, percolation tests in order to support the application. What we're seeing here is what we have here is the septic system. It's comprised of 2 components, essentially. There's the primary. This is where the actual piping is located, and then the let's call it the south side of the area is the reserve. So in the future, if they need to replace the system, they have this already laid out and ready for them to do so. Again, as it was pointed out, the majority of the site is essentially filled with wetland area, and essentially the buildable area is located on this south west area of the site. Further to the south of the site, there is the access drive to State Route 9. So you come in this way. The house itself, again, is a 3-bedroom home. It is accessed by a gravel driveway. The impervious structure, the home, is collected via a gutter system and directed to a dry well system on site, so all the impervious areas are being mitigated. That's the summary of it.
I have a lot of questions about that septic field.
So do we all.
Okay, because and it's really hard for me to see what the elevation of that slope is there. Is that being built on a slope?
It is being on a slope. This was coordinated with the health department. It is a waiver that we've obtained in order to construct it as such.
Do we know what is the grade of that slope?
It's approximately 15%.
So is the waiver for bringing in fill, or is it for cutting?
It is both, but we are bringing in clean run-of-bank material as.
Well, of course you would.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
Because the little I could see on Steve's plan when we were at a site visit, it looks like part of it was a cut to reduce the slope.
The slope is reduced to around 12%, 13%.
Okay, so it's a minor, okay.
Yeah, it's
a
minor in order to.
What we were,
Yep.
right, what we're not seeing is, I didn't see any test pits, percolation holes. When was this originally permitted?
The approval was this earlier this summer.
The waiver or the?
When were test pits dug? Because we didn't see anything on site.
They were done about 2 years ago.
2?
A little more than 2 years, something like
Because
that.
we didn't see any evidence of the
signs- no
forest
signs of any-
being breached
Yeah,
at all.
I can get that information, but yeah.
Could you walk us through the waiver process that you went through? I mean, we don't have any of that information from the county that you've already corresponded with them, and typically with these applications as well, we would get a copy of the health department permits to review.
Yeah, the waiver process is essentially just an application that we submit to them as part of this, the plans that we prepare, and then that waiver process, essentially it's an internal discussion with the health department and the associate directors, reviewers, and then they make that decision and provide that information to us. So it's not a process where we go in and discuss it, kind of like a situation like this.
So is there a document, a
Yeah.
waiver document?
There is, yeah, we have that document, yes.
Yeah, I mean, normally what we would receive from the engineering firm is beforehand, we would receive your plans, which we have not. So we're at a bit of a handicap. And if we had received plans early on, particularly from Max, our environmental officer, if there was a question of a waiver, we probably would have seen that sitting in our hands right now.
Right.
Sorry, do you mean plans or the actual permit documents? Because you
Permit
do have
documents and plans.
You have the engineer's plans, I mean, these are the engineer's plans.
We haven't seen them. I mean, we're seeing them now. They were never distributed to us. It's required that they be distributed to us.
No, that's part of the application package, you received the site plans. Or we submitted the site plans, I should put it that way.
We received your plan, but that was about it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
In,
The first submission was this plan.
did that also include the Board of Health approval on the waiver document?
Approval on one sheet, apparently that was poorly
I don't-
scanned or something, and there's been some issues.
I don't
with
remember
the-
seeing that, yeah.
So that was all included in our initial package.
Okay.
And I could put that package, I could make additional copies and get it to you again, but that was,
Okay.
certainly it wasn't, we didn't just file an application page and, no, we included plans, we included, I think there were photographs in there, I have to double check exactly what was in the package, but certainly the health department approval was part of that package.
Yeah, no, I don't remember seeing it either. So, between the both of you, reiterate what is basically within a wetland buffer, what you're proposing to put in a wetland buffer, and I don't think you're hitting steep slopes, but I don't think we're on grade 3 at this point. So, tell us a little bit about that once more. So we can decide where we go with this. Okay.
We'll just, as a reminder, then we'll look at this plan again. There's the proposed house, 3-bedroom house. Everything in the light green color is buffer, and the darker green is the actual flag delineated wetlands. So, most of the house and a portion, and probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the septic system would be in the buffer. That's allowed by health code because this is not DEC wetland.
Right.
If it was DEC, go ahead.
Do me a favor, use your finger and draw what would be the south, I guess you call it southeast border of the property.
Southeast border?
We know the east border, I want to know the border, what part of the property, which I believe is part of the knob, is outside of the buffer?
Well, only the gravel driveway in the front there. As you recall, when we walked in on that gravel driveway. There's the neighbor's lawn
So
to the
that's out of
south.
the buffer, but I'm seeing white, so I'm assuming,
Well, white is the knob, essentially.
knob, okay.
White is the knob and the steeper slopes on the site.
ouch,
Didn't say it was gonna be easy,
no.
but we're working with what we have.
Yeah.
To the extent we can, we're trying to work with what we have.
I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is what can be done in terms of an alternative septic system, so at least there's less incursion and more contained within the buffer.
Well, we will look into the system you mentioned before, or what Mr. Prins was
Right.
speaking about as well, as a pre-treatment or some kind of a,
In
we will look into that.
In terms of the house, I'm not real,
Well,
We
you
tried to
it
put it on the
top
other side of the knob, so
You
it's
could-
further
You could
away
put
from,
it
at
on
least
top of the
from.
knob.
Yeah, I mean, on the whole, we try to stay away from that, but the question becomes, would that make more sense, building a house on top of the knob? I don't know.
I think the closer we get to the knob, the further the septic system ends up getting pushed down the hill. Because we do start, if you take that footprint and put it up there, now the back of the house is essentially where the tank and the,
Unless you've got an alternate, an alternative system that doesn't require
if
that kind
if there's
of.
something that needs a smaller footprint for
Yeah.
the shorter leaching beds, et cetera, well then, we'll take a step back and take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need an alternative that's reasonable. And when I say reasonable, it's reasonable for us to look at, and it's also reasonable, we're
That it
not
can actually
asking the
be built
homeowner
in,
to
yeah.
do something that's extraordinary.
Right.
But I think this begs for that.
We will take a step back then and reevaluate that. Okay. And one thing we briefly discussed on the site walk, and something we would certainly entertain in terms of mitigation, because we're going to be looking at some mitigation, because obviously regardless of where we end up with the house and the septic system, we're going to have buffer encroachment. So as you recall, there's that parking area right off the existing gravel driveway. That extends, and we tried to figure out more or less when that happened, probably 20, 30 years ago. That extends in back around the knob as a poorly constructed gravel driveway. We could look at pulling out some of that material. You'll know more about it than I do as far as that goes, so, okay.
Have the original subdivision maps, I think your property lines are incorrect.
I'm not the survey, that I can't address. But we will certainly look at the possibility of taking out a significant amount of that material to restore some of the buffer between the disturbance area and the wetland to the best we can. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah.
Reducing the size of the house would reduce the size.
It's
of
certainly
the-
something we would consider if it wasn't already a pretty small house. I mean, it's not really a very large footprint of a house. I'll get you the exact dimensions. Again, it's a 3-bedroom house,
I mean, I guess you could go up and do a 3-story house.
Or you could do a 2-bedroom.
Yeah.
I was once before the Bedford Wetlands Commission, and someone had suggested a 12 by 12 house, 6 stories high.
Well,
And
that's
we
a
all
code.
kind of said that's a
Yeah.
nice concept, but no.
Yeah.
I understand that.
I'll get you more detail on the actual dimensions of the house and how it's configured height-wise and
you.
such, and
Yeah, that would
we can
be
use that as something to work with.
Okay, so I believe we have a neighbor that had some concerns? Okay.
Do you want to come up and present what you have to say, or? Yeah.
Yes.
You have to,
Please, come up, please introduce yourself and where you live. Use the microphone. We need this for the record.
I'm James Meany, neighbor. Just a couple things. Where he's saying it's white here, this is a right-of-way. So are they taking the setbacks off this corner of the right-of-way or this corner of the right-of-way? Because that's a right-of-way. The road he's talking about, the previous owner 20 years ago filled in the wetlands and got a stop work order. That's why he couldn't go anymore. That's why there's a road there. We had no problem with the house. It was our understanding it was going to be built down away from us. Now you're building this house right outside our front door. It makes our property worthless now. That's the only problem we have with it. We had no problem when they were going to build down here, but now my front door's right here. That's 4 acres, 4.5 acres, and you're building it on top of my house. That's,
Are you in the back house or the side?
yeah, the front house. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Right opposite.
The rear,
You
yeah.
had the dog running around?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
the
All right.
labs.
Just want to know where you are.
Yeah, our house is right here. Like I said, this is a right-of-way. I mean, are they doing the setbacks from the corner here or the corner of this right-of-way? But the road was filled in, the wetlands would have been up here now, but it's all filled in with gravel. I mean, you guys went there during the drought. If you go there during when it's raining, it's filled up.
Well, that's why the buffer, that whole area that's shaded in green is the buffer.
Okay. That's all I had to correct on that, but we have the original plans to show that's all right away there. And there was no test holes. We've been there 14 years now. There's never been a machine The original plan that it was. I have the original plans if you want to see what the board helped approve.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see that.
Another neighbor, I believe.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
You just have to introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Melanie Wong Dodge, and I live in the Brown House.
That's the one in the front.
Front house. And so I just, I want to make sure that the property lines are correct, because the other day I was home and they unloaded, the new neighbors unloaded a pod, and they wanted to put it right on that little square of asphalt, because they thought that was the person who is from Welcomed Homes got on the phone, 'cause I got on the phone with him and he said that's their property. And my understanding is it's my property, and I have my drawings too. So they said they didn't want a problem. Could I please let them put it on the gravel? And, yes, I don't want to be, bad to my new neighbors, but now they're going to use my property as a driveway. And so I don't want a house right there on the road either, because it's going to reduce my home property value as well. So those are just some concerns I have. And then, I think when I was watching the video from last time, some of the mitigation that was planned for the septic tank, of which I know nothing about, but I do remember hearing somebody talk about the way we do it will keep this from flooding, but this flooded all across the bridge. Was it Hurricane Irene? Sandy. So before I owned the property, it had all come across. Right now, we're getting runoff from across the street. We've got a hole in the driveway. So Jimmy filled that in. And so I'm concerned about additional flooding. And if we're having crazy weather like this drought, and the ground is not as porous, a lot of more runoff is going to happen. So at least my daughter told me that, and she's an environmental science major. So not sure if that's entirely accurate, but I'm just concerned about a couple of these things. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve, yes. Your plans, when you pulled it off a GIS system, were you using a survey?
I was using the base map provided to me by the engineer as the base survey for the property, so. Yeah. I can address a couple of things really quickly. The gravel pull-off area we were just talking about, to the best of my knowledge, that is not on the Welcome Homes property. That is on the adjacent property owner's property. That's shown right here. If you remember when we were out there, we saw the one property corner stake and how it kind of went diagonal off into the woods here. The gravel drive entering the site actually comes out this way to Route 9. So that enters Route 9 down here and comes in. So the property itself kind of goes off on an angle. Essentially, the corner of that gravel parking area there where the pod is now, that the corner of that is on the property line and then heads off into the woods. Regarding rights of way, and I don't know if this is a right of way to that driveway, if it's an easement. I don't know how that's structured. And I will look into that for sure. I definitely will.
About a 50-foot setback from the center before you put your structures. That's what we were told we built. So just something to look into also and take into consideration.
Because the survey we were given and the survey we've been looking at shows that as being within the boundaries of this property, but we'll be happy to check that out as well.
I think something that needs.
Oh, just a question of, and then let me just address the question of flooding. We are required by law not to increase the runoff leaving our site, as you know, and we are providing for chambers for the water to go into.
I saw that on this plan.
Into the ground so that it doesn't increase any flooding.
I think another thing we need is, I think the property, you're going to need to do it anyway for whoever's buying the property, so to speak, and getting a loan. The property needs to be surveyed. I think we need to see now. I think there's enough of a question now where the boundaries are, that I think it's imperative that the property is surveyed and flagged.
Now, we did see new stakes out there, so someone has been out there to do some.
It's been surveyed. The question will go back to the surveyor.
We'll go back to the survey and get a new, and get the actual survey.
Because it didn't look
And
to
the
me
right-
what
yeah,
I
the
was
right
seeing.
of way.
It didn't look to me like for instance, didn't look like Beatty and Watson survey flags to me, but I might have been missing them, sometimes you do. I saw other survey marks.
It was not a Watson survey.
Right, I did see marks for theoretically where the septic system would be, but I was not seeing property, because I think now we need to know. I think we need to,
Okay. That would
do
be,
that.
that would be easy enough for us to get us, the updated
Okay.
survey. Okay,
We have other comments at this point?
None of it's, we have to eyeball it
Yeah, yeah, it's a tough site.
pronto.
Yeah, we understand that, it's a tough site.
see how the septic tank, the septic system permit was approved without any site work.
and it seems odd to me as well that that would be the case, so I can't imagine that that happened. Health Department, the health, but I can't say to that, address that one way or the other, but I can say that the Health Department would never approve a system if they hadn't seen the deep holes and perk test that they needed to see, so.
I'm going to go through my materials, but I don't recall seeing any of that documentation, so I would like to see the documents from the health department too.
Yeah, I can't
And they can
explain
be
that, but.
distributed to us
We'll
electronically.
do- Yeah,
So we speed
Yeah,
this
that's
up.
fine.
Just want to say, when we built our house in Mount Sabine, that is a beautiful piece of property. It is a 4-acre piece of property. It's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous place. When we built our house in 2014, we had restrictions placed on us. You can't be higher than this amount. You can't be bigger than this amount. You can't be to the left. You can't be to the right. Because it was protecting the privacy of the houses around us. You can't see. All you can see is a roof line of Melanie's house in front of us, and that's it. We just planted some trees. You can't see the neighbors. So to have a house right there on a 4-acre lot is just really unfortunate for both people. I mean, it's one
And I
of
think
the
your point-
flaws
can I
of the
just-
law.
Yeah, I mean,
Your
I
point as
understand,
well. Go ahead.
okay, I mean, I understand your concerns. Unfortunately, it's not our purview, though we'd like to work for the best solution. But you're saying that you had restrictions on your lot. It's part of the same subdivision?
Yeah.
So then I think the other thing we need to see is whatever deeds go with it, are there restrictions on the
Plaque
deeds?
or whatever,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think that's missing.
I was going to state at one time.
Yeah, that makes
Yes,
sense that this, I
yes.
mean, I was looking at the,
Called it Oz land in the beginning.
yeah.
Right.
It's Miami Farms, I think is the name of it.
I was seeing, because I went to the County E parcel, which only, it's still a ways, it went back to 96, I believe, and it was a Devon LLC. So I don't know, but I think it begs at this point, if there are restrictions on your property, that I'm taking your word that it's part of the same subdivision, then I would think there were restrictions on this as well, and I think
Well,
we
we
need to
certainly
see
have,
that.
and beyond that, we certainly have restrictions in that about 80% of the site is either wetlands or buffers, so we're kind of forced into that location. We're not, if we could put it here, we'd love to do that. I shouldn't say we, I'm only the wetlands guy, I'm just, I'm representing we're representing the part, but,
Just go by the information I
yeah. So we will certainly,
And
so,
also aside from, I understand the property line issue, and we'd have to look at that, but the home itself, just taking into what we understand the property line, which we will check, the home where it's sited is within all the setback requirements, height restrictions, so that all has been checked and cited accordingly. Now, I completely understand your concern, and that's something that we'll look into, but
Yeah,
just.
you're taking off a 50-foot right away.
Yeah, no.
On my side, that's 50 foot.
Yeah, we just, we didn't have that, if we can take a look at that, like you said, yeah, I mean,
I'll give you the plan. You make copies.
thank you.
so we have some research to do, it sounds like. so.
I mean, you haven't worked with us before, I mean, we're here to make sure that the best thing is done and to help you do the best thing. It is, from what I gather, a pre-approved lot, so the owner of it has the right to build a house. We have to figure out how we fit it in. And we'll work with you.
We'll be back.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, I don't think we have any other new business. Old business you'd like to discuss, Max?
Nope, all good.
Okay. Nothing on stormwater?
Not this month, no.
Not much of it.
No. Oh, I
No,
closed
that's
out,
true.
I closed the Magazino, the old Magazino stormwater permit recently with Ron, so, but that was a few years post due. So, that's really it.
So, Cheryl, you gonna? Site visit. I would suggest a Saturday morning early.
I need to put it right in my calendar if we come up with that.
I mean,
Which,
You want-
all of them?
well, we have two.
The two?
The two. Try to knock off the two.
So are we thinking this Saturday?
I would say, I can't do it this Saturday. I would say the following Saturday. This way, Mr. Prins could do some more staking.
So that's, the 24th?
24th.
It's my wedding anniversary.
Oh, I can't do it the 24th. Unless the weather's bad.
Spending my wedding anniversary with you guys again?
No, I got roped into,
We get a better time than that.
it's either we do a Sunday or do the following week. We do October 1st?
I'm out of town October 1st,
Let me know.
but
I mean, you know, you certainly know King's Dock well enough.
Yeah.
October 1st?
October 1st
October 1st?
works for me.
Okay, October 1st.
they're both right next to each other.
Can we do them? They're nearby.
Yeah, I would say do Prins first, and then we'll do
Okay, October 1st?
October 1st,
What
9
time you
a.m.
wanna start?
9 a.m.
Okay.
Where? Which one?
We'll
King's
start
Dock?
King's Dock.
King's Dock first. Okay. Thank you. Good?
We're gonna close the meeting.
Yes. Okay.
Fantastic.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make this.
Yep. Second?
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming in.